Does the Torah talk about dinosaurs? The answer is that the Torah is not a history book. So you can tell me, Rabbi, what does it say in the Torah about dinosaurs? The Torah is not a history book because you see clearly there's a lot of parts in the Torah that are not mentioned. You see 80 years of Moshe Rabbeinu's life does not explain in the Torah. 38 years of Jewish people in the desert are also not explained. You only have 2 years of what we did in the desert. What happened 38 years of times in the desert, the Torah doesn't explain. So a lot of things the Torah does not explain. The Torah is not a history book. So therefore, a person have to understand that. Is there a proof in the Torah that there is a dinosaur? First of all, the Torah does not call it a dinosaur. Dinosaur is a Latin word. It came much, much later. So if you're looking for the word dinosaur in the Torah, you're not going to find it because it's made up from a Latin word. So what would the Torah call a big creature that looks like a dinosaur? So you would see Hashem called, we learned in last week's parasha, Hashem called Tininim Gidulim. Hashem made big, huge sea creatures. These big, huge sea creatures, if Hashem created big, huge sea creatures, why wouldn't God create big dinosaurs? What would be the problem? Why can God create big birds and big reptiles? What's the problem with that? So therefore, sometimes could be that not necessarily do we find in the Torah things that we're looking for, but it could be that's mentioned in a different words. So for example, when the Torah says birds in the sky, when the Torah says bird, does that mean one type of bird? Or is the Torah referring to all different types of birds? All different types of birds. So when the Torah talks about animals, talk about all a specific type of animal? No. So whenever the Torah speaks about teninim gedolim, these big, huge teninim, is that talking about what specifically water reptiles, or no? Talking about every single big creature. That could be. So technically speaking, if you're looking in the Torah, teninim gedolim could be that. Even though, so how do we translate teninim today? Some people translate teninim as a snake, some people as a crocodile, whatever it is. But the Maaseh, that will be how it's called. So we see in the Torah that there's probably what it is. So is there such thing as a dinosaur in the Torah? Could be tanin. Could be tanin. Why not? I can translate tanin, not specifically huge creatures in the water. It could be any huge creatures. What about in the Gemara? Do we find anything in the Gemara that talks about these huge, huge creatures? Many places, and if you ever learn Masech Baba Batra, talking about the stories Rabbi Bar Chana, there are many, many examples of the Gemara saying that the rabbis met huge, huge creatures. Well, let me give you a few examples. The Gemara says Rabbi Bar Chana went one day, he found a creature called Bar Yoma, and they said it's as big as Mount Tavor, which means its neck was 3 parsaot, about 12 kilometers. Its head rested on area 1/2 of the parsa, and basically it made a poop, and the poop blocked the Jordan River. That's how big it was. That's what the Gemara says. There's a midrash that said that David HaMelech one time saw a big re'im, an animal called re'im. I think it's like a wild ox, whatever it is. It's so big that he thought it was a mountain, so he climbed it all the way to his horns. And as the animal woke up, it started to get up, and he was all the way up, all the way to the sky. And it went all the way to the sky. So he said, "Wow!" He said, and he made a promise to Hashem. He said, "Hashem, I'm going to build a Bet HaMikdash as high as this, as high as where it was picked up." There's also tachash. There was an animal that the Gemara says in Masech Shabbat that they used, was created for one time. It was called tachash, and from using that skin, we used that skin. It had one horn. We used that skin to cover all the Bet HaMikdash utensils. All of them. There's a lot of utensils, and one animal's skin covered all the utensils. How can that be? Whatever it is. Seemingly that could be it. There's other things. The Rabbi Bar Chana says there was a giant frog, and it was swallowed by a serpent. And other places like that. So clearly we see in the Gemara that there are such a things as huge animals. It could be that they did exist. So the question is, the number one question is, whenever they're finding these bones, they're finding them what is about 65 million years old. That's the biggest issue. How do we reconcile that with the Torah? If you tell me in the times of the Gemara they had it. Times of the Gemara they had it. Or Hashem did create it. So how did they tell me it's 65,000 years old? 65 million years old. What? You're saying there's bad in math. So the answer is very simple. There's a few answers to this question. We discussed a few of them. So number one is maybe the Mabul aged it. The Mabul aged it, which means sometimes not Mabul aged it. Let's not. When Hashem created the world, did Hashem create people in a small? What age did Hashem create it in? No. How old was Adam Arishon when Hashem created him? No. He was an adult. So when Hashem created the mountains, when Hashem created the trees, when Hashem created different animals, He didn't create, let's say, a wolf, a small, tiny wolf. He created him a big adult wolf. So when Hashem created these dinosaurs, could be that He created them at a very, very old age. So now when you're finding these fossils, not fossils, when you're finding these bones, they find them that it makes it 65 million years old. So that's one answer. Then there's another answer is maybe that Kadosh Baruch Hu created worlds and destroyed worlds. We discussed this in the past. So which means that God created worlds and destroyed worlds. This is something that's called Shemitah cycles, which means most of the Kabbalists, and Arizal's on the one side, but all the other Kabbalists say that God created the world in a 7,070 cycles, which means 7 Shmitot. So, and Hashem would create, there's going to be 7,000 years of civilization, and Hashem is going to destroy the world, and He's going to restart it again. That's going to happen 7 times. And according to that calculation, we are only in the second one. We're only in the second one. The Arizal doesn't agree with this. The Arizal doesn't agree with this, but in the end of the day, so it could be that this reason these bones are created, maybe it's from the previous time that the world existed. So it could be that's why. The question is why they're so old, why they're looking at so old. So the answer is like, what would the scientists tell you? How did this particular bones came out to be? First of all, how come there are no more dinosaurs? So the scientists say that there's some sort of a huge disaster happened. So that disaster happened, and that's why it came and wiped them all out. That pretty much coincides with what it says in the parasha, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought a Mabul. That could be a real case of why it was. So Hashem could probably brought them a Mabul and probably wiped them all out. And the Gemara tells us, we learned it in Masechah Rosh Hashanah, how did God make the Mabul happen? He took 2 stars and He put them together, and seemingly there was some sort of a catastrophe. Huge catastrophe that actually killed all of them. So therefore, imagine a person would come and take a fossil from Hiroshima or Nagasaki. He would take a small fossil to see what it's like, right? And he had no idea, he would have no idea that there was a chemical bomb dropped here. What he would say, how old would he say the things as he's testing them? How old is he? He would say it's millions years old, because that's what, whenever a huge calamity, that it makes things look much older. So that's basically that. So the question is then, how did the people during the times of the Gemara, how did they find it? How did they find it? Could be that Noach took the eggs of some of these animals and put them on the teva. Yeah, it was probably too big to have a dinosaur in a teva, but it's very much plausible to say they probably took eggs. They do find them eggs, right? So the problem is the problem is that if you're going to tell me that they are, Darwin. What is this theory? The theory of evolution. Right, they said there's evolution, so what's the problem? The number one problem is there's a hole in that theory. What? We don't find fossils in between. We don't find, if they tell, the birds you said it came from what? From dinosaurs. So how come that we don't find intermediary stages? You only find stages of one particular animal. So that's, there's a big hole in that theory.
Evolution, they evolve.
That's what you do find. That's exactly what he's saying. Like, where's the intermediate? The intermediate says,
how come
the missing link. The concept of missing link.
The missing link. So that's a big hole in evolution theory. That's a big hole in this theory as well. So some say that these animals, how they came out to be. Some the suggestion is that it probably was crossbreeding. Some people started to crossbreed one animal, like elephant with a crocodile, and places like that, and they made big animals like that. And you see clearly that the Gemara says, the Torah says clearly in the end of the book of Devarim, the og's bed was 9 cubits long. The word giants, as we discussed on Monday. So the word giants, and these could be these giants actually crossbred these animals, and this is what you got to. So technically speaking, are dinosaurs mentioned in the Torah? It possibly could be. You just have to learn the parasha very clearly and very vague. The Torah says, there's a pasuk in the Torah that says, "Vaymachu." Hashem erased them from the world. So there are some commentators that say, what does it mean Hashem erased them from the world? Hashem erased even their bones. Look at that. Hashem took them, and He says He made it upside down. He took the bottom, what was on the bottom, He picked it up, what was on the top, what was on the bottom. Which means when Adam HaRishon came out, he did not even see their bones. He didn't see any skeletons, no people dying. He saw nothing. So which means all mixed up. So, Noach. I said, no, Adam? Yeah. So when Noach came out of the Teva. So clearly you see there's a lot of hints for dinosaurs in the parasha, except it's not called dinosaur, it's probably called other names, what the Torah calls it. Dinosaur is a Latin name, but it very much exists based on the Torah.